Hello, this is AstrologerCoach Sonja Francis, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming new moon in Libra, which will be exact on September 28th at 2:26 p.m. New York time and 7:26 p.m. London time. And this Libra new moon takes place in almost 5.5 degrees of Libra. And of course, every new moon is always a time to go within. It's an introverted time. We learn what we wish to align ourselves with for the next 28 days. So it's also the best time for setting intentions for this new lunar cycle. And I will talk about the best and most potent time to be setting our intentions towards the end of this video. So stay tuned for that. And I also want to mention that if you want to watch this video in shorter sequences, take advantage of the timestamps that are in the description part of the video underneath the video. All right, so that way you can jump back and forth more easily without losing your place. Now, with this new moon being in harmony, loving, balance-seeking Libra, we will likely want to create win-win situations, fair exchanges, and harmony in our lives, within our relationships, but also within our general environment. So even though we have 4 planets in Libra at the time of this new moon, including Venus, which is the ruler of Libra, it's in its own sign, harmony and balance is not something that is easily achieved with this lunation, because we also have plenty of challenging aspects in this new moon chart, and that kind of keeps us a little bit off balance, and to say nothing of course, the Pluto station phase that's also going to be happening at the time of this new moon, and that's already been going on before as well. And that has been intensifying since September 22nd. So we're definitely feeling this Pluto energy very strongly, and it's in Capricorn right now. It's coming to a halt on October 3rd, and that's really only 5 days after the new moon becomes exact. So the station phase is going to be very, very strong at the time of the new moon. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but what I want to quickly mention is that if you missed our forecasting forum on September 19th, you may want to get the MP4 video presentation of this event. We discussed the Pluto station in Capricorn in great detail, and the planet going direct as well. And we discussed it in particular in relationship to our own birth charts, as well as we talked also about the Saturn station. So if you want to know how these planetary movements are impacting you personally, click on the link below this video or go to my website, to astrologercoach.com, hover over the services tab on the top right hand corner if you're looking at it from a computer, and then click on webinars and add the Saturn Pluto station webinar to your cart. Now, until October 3rd, you get a 20% discount for this 85-minute webinar. And all you have to do is just add the discount code webinars for less. And the discount code will be underneath the video as well, so you know what it is. You just add that at checkout and you get your 20% discount. Okay, so let's go back to the new moon, and specifically let's talk about the Libra component of this new moon chart. What is Libra all about? So of course, it's about relationships, right? And all relationships begin with our relationship to ourselves. Everything out there is really inside of us. So Libra is really sort of like a mirror or a reflection of what's inside of us that we're seeing out there in the world or in our relationships with other people. So ideally speaking, interacting with another person is a co-creative, equal exchange. And so we must be centered within ourselves, but also tuned into each other in order to make that work, right? So, and of course, we also need to be responding to the rhythm of life as well, individually and together, so that we can really take advantage of the most highest expression of Libra. Now, here are some useful questions that you can ask yourself for this new moon cycle. Where is the balancing point in my life currently? Where or how do I achieve this balancing point? Or what comes up for me when I hear the phrase, the art of relationship? Now, each of us will have different ideas of what that represents, depending on how we were raised, depending on what types of relationships we've engaged in so far in our lives. So just kind of let yourself maybe journal on, like write down the art of relationship, and then just let yourself journal on what comes up when you hear that. Just write down a bunch of stuff that comes to mind as you hear that. And of course, with all the questions from my video, you can always use them for journaling, use them for meditation, or use them just to have them in the back of your mind as you're moving through this lunar cycle, through this moon cycle. All right, so Libra is the 7th sign of the zodiac. And so it represents a major turning point, and it invites us to investigate ourselves through the lens of others, or through the lens of relationship, and how we're relating on a one-on-one level with other people. So the way we do that as individuals is we bring everything that we've learned up until the point that we've reached that Libra energy. So all the 6 signs that come before Libra, anything between Aries and Virgo, right? Those are the 6 signs before Libra. All of that we're bringing to the Libra energy, right? We're bringing that to our relationships. So depending on how well we've done with the 6 signs that come before Libra, we're attracting people into our lives who mirror back to us our relationship to ourselves. Because the first 6 signs in the zodiac are in connection to how do we deal with ourselves, right? Different areas of life. Now, Libra invites us to see all of these issues and resolve them and become more whole with the help of, that mirror effect from the outside world, right? So what you can ask yourself here is, what if harmony and peace were mine to create within me first? Now, the Libra energy really encourages us to see both sides of a situation and sort of find a middle path, or you could also say finding a win-win between 2 sides. And so in order to reconcile opposite energies, we need to seek the highest and best outcome for everyone involved. And that also includes ourselves. So in other words, we need to see everyone as equally deserving, right? Again, that includes ourselves. So not just everyone out there is equally deserving, we're equally deserving too. And so that's very much important when we're dealing with other people. Now, Libra also represents the quest for reconciliation of opposites, especially our masculine and feminine energies, right? So each one of us, no matter what gender you were born into, you will have masculine and feminine energies within you, because that's just normal. Masculine is the doing energy, feminine is the receiving energy, right? Just to keep it very general. Or you can also say the active and the receptive sides of ourselves. And we need both in order to connect to life fully, and in order to really serve ourselves and others in a bigger way. We need both. So obviously opposite attracts in order to create wholeness. And so that we can achieve unity and we can achieve this wholeness, we have to integrate these dichotomies within ourselves. But usually we tend to identify with one end of the polarity more so than with the other. When we tend to identify with one polarity more so, what happens is that we end up projecting the other polarity onto other people or groups of people. So something that we can't be with, or something that we can't fully own, actually becomes a projection and becomes something that we're then experiencing through others. And the reason why we have to experience it through others is because it is a part of ourselves, because we always have both. We always have masculine and feminine, active and receptive and so on, right? Like whatever the polar opposites of anything is, right? Duality, that's just part of life, or human life, I should say, right? So if we have a preference towards one, then we tend to, feel more at ease there. We feel more familiar there. We feel more comfortable there. But then the other side sort of gets neglected a little bit. And if there is not a true balance between the two, that's when we start to projecting stuff out into the world. So what you can ask yourself here is, what does treating others fairly mean to me personally? What does that mean? And what does being treated fairly mean to me, right? So having vice versa, right? You towards others, others towards you. And if I could envision the ideal relationship, what would that look like to me? What would an ideal relationship look like to you? And this is important. If you can journal on that or write down what that is for you, can be very revealing about certain things that are maybe in imbalance within you, right? Because sometimes the ideal relationship that we picture has either to do with, a person that can fulfill some of the things that we can't fulfill ourselves, within ourselves, or it's stuff that we really love about ourselves that we also want to see in our relationship with other people. So it can be both, but sometimes it can be quite revealing to see what is that ideal relationship. And it tells you more about yourself, right, than it really tells you about other people. Now, another question you can ask yourself here is, could I give myself permission to drop my expectations and my shoulds around relationships just for right now? And that's a good one, especially for this new moon chart, because expectations and shoulds, expectations are connected to Jupiter and Sagittarius. Shoulds are connected to that Saturn, South Node, Pluto energy in Capricorn. And so because we have all these planets in Libra as well, we're needing to take a look at all of this here. We need to take a look at, how could I give myself permission to drop my expectations and my shoulds around relationships just for right now? Because some of that can really hold us back from having harmonious relationships, or from having relationships that really work quite well, that are equally deserving. Our expectations and shoulds. So maybe also something to journal on, could be quite revealing what your expectations might be, what your shoulds might be around relationships. Now, some more questions you can ask here is, what might be a first step towards relationships that honor both parties equally? What might be a first step? It's always important when we're thinking of wanting to create the ideal situation of something. It's always important to narrow it down a little bit to one thing, so that we can take it one thing at a time, so that we don't go berserk and don't go into this place of all or nothing, but that we're able to just take it slowly. Let's start with one thing. So what might be that one first step that we could take? And how might honoring myself contribute to that? And what might be possible if I gave myself permission to approve of myself right here, right now, and for no particular reason, just because? And that, of course, that question really is very strongly connected to the Libra energy, because very often with Libra, we want to have approval from other people. But of course, if we can focus that approval back onto ourselves, and if we can take responsibility for giving ourselves approval, then we're no longer in this codependency game that we have with other people, where we need the approval of others in order to feel okay ourselves. So how might honoring myself contribute to that? And what might be possible if I gave myself permission to approve of myself right here, right now, and for no particular reason, just because? All right, now if you want to have access to the new moon questions from this video, because there's going to be a bunch more in writing, so you can journal with them or meditate with them, And also, if you want to have access to the full moon videos every month, feel free to check out the various levels of membership that are available currently at astrologercoach.com. Because with these memberships come a lot of extra stuff, a lot of extra bonuses that you can get other than just the new moon video. All right. Now, if you're already a member, check your membership portal by signing into your account, and you will find all my posts inside the My Content tab. And that's how you can access all the posts, members and non-members. And the new moon questions are also available via the New Moon in Libra article. If you want to look for that, then you can get all the new moon questions if you're already a member. Now, back to the new moon. Now, let's take a look at some of the other aspects in this new moon chart. The new moon opposes Chiron in Aries and Quincunxes Uranus in Taurus. Now, let's unpack that a little bit. So let's start with the opposition to Chiron. So the new moon opposing Chiron in Aries indicates that we need to find a balance between two very different energies. On the one hand, there is that wounded warrior energy in Aries. And so that really requires our compassion. It requires a compassionate approach towards our personal goals and all those masculine energies within ourselves. And then on the other hand, there is a need to connect and collaborate with other people and to have these harmonious interactions. So what we can ask ourselves here is, what if taking a compassionate approach towards myself and my goals actually made for more fulfilling connections with other people? So bringing this kindness, bringing this understanding to ourselves and our own insecurities or sensitivities, or our own wounding from the past, right? Our wounding that's connected to our inner child, or the past that we've experienced as a child. If we bring that kindness and that compassion also towards our relationships with other people, how might that contribute to a more fulfilling connection with others? All right, and then we have the quincunx to Uranus in Taurus. So a quincunx, of course, is always about adjustments, inner adjustments. It feels quite uneasy. We feel awkward internally. And so we need to kind of like make certain choices, but we keep needing to make these adjustments. It's like an ongoing thing, right? So it feels uncomfortable. So this really demands that we develop an inner awareness around two very different sides that are showing up inside of us. On the one hand, we want to innovate in the area of what we value, and maybe also have some financial breakthroughs, wanting to connect to our own values in a new and different way, in a more individualistic way. And then on the other hand, we feel the need to attend to our one-on-one relationships and supporting them, and maybe also collaborate. Again, that Libra energy. So what you could ask yourself here is, what might a breakthrough connected to the physical plane look like for me at this time? What might become possible if I got 5% more comfortable with being uncomfortable just for right now? Or 5% more comfortable with embracing uncertainty? Again, it's this quincunx, right? When we're dealing with a quincunx, when we're dealing with the quincunx to Uranus in particular, there's something that's uncomfortable, there's something that's uncertain, and so we need to keep making adjustments. Even if that goes against that part of us that seeks harmony, that seeks balance, which is, of course, all that Libra stuff. Now, another aspect with this new moon chart is that Venus, the ruler of Libra, aligns with Mercury in Libra, and both square Pluto in Capricorn. And of course, Pluto is also exalted because of that station. So one thing at a time. Let's start with the alignment to Mercury. So that shows us that we have the ability to communicate from the heart. And in fact, it's essential that we connect to people we have an affinity with, that we feel a harmonious, peaceful connection with, and communicate with on an equal footing. So what you can ask yourself here is, what is just or unjust? What would honesty without judgment look like? in connection with our communication with other people. What might be possible if I met people halfway? Very Libra thing. And what if I balanced and integrated my inner masculine and feminine? And how could I allow myself to be both strong and caring, right? The masculine, strong, the feminine, caring. What would happen if I could allow myself to be focused and yet open-minded and open-hearted, active and receptive, right? So again, it's that masculine, feminine. Now keep in mind, the more one side is denied or suppressed, the more distorted the other side becomes. Because then the other side kind of revs up, the volume gets too loud a little bit. So if the volume of the masculine side is too loud, then we know that the feminine has been denied and suppressed, and vice versa, right? So we really need to pay attention is where is the volume set too loud or where is it set too low? Now the square to Pluto indicates that we really want to collaborate with others and play nice, but also feel a very deep urge to be authentic and truthful and passionate about what we want to build long-term and focus on those long-term goals. So we may not always be able to, collaborate with other people because we're so focused on, this building a career or building something long-term. And so we may have to make some changes or adjustments to some of our long-term goals or perhaps some relationships. And so as best as you can, be open to receiving feedback from others while remaining connected to what truly empowers you from within. So this is really not so much about empowerment in the outside world. It's more about what is empowering to you from within, what works for you to feel empowered out there in the world, but internally, right? And a square, of course, always relates back to the conjunction between the two planets involved. So since we have 3 planets involved here, we're going to look at 2 conjunctions. And in this case, we'll look at Venus connected to Pluto, which was exact on December 28th, 2018 at 20.5 degrees of Capricorn. And Mercury aligned with Pluto on January 18th of 2019 at 21 degrees of Capricorn. So both of these conjunctions happened at around within a month from each other, right? At the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. And so what we want to ask ourselves here is, what was happening then for me around relationships or long-term goals? And how about the desire to feel empowered out there in the world? What was going on around that? And what is calling for change now? What were my motivations then and what are they now? Because with a square, there's always sort of like something is shifting, right? So there's some kind of an adjustment that we now need to be making. So what were my motivations then and what are they now? And if you feel pressured into doing something or feel like a power struggle building with someone, get as centered and as grounded as you are able to, and then use your creativity to craft some win-win situations if possible. And ask yourself, what if there was a major growth opportunity here in the skies as you're experiencing if you're experiencing something like that, right? If you're experiencing pressure or power struggles. What if this were a major growth opportunity in the skies? And what might be possible if I brought 5% more acceptance to those parts of myself that I have rejected because I feared disapproval? And so this is something we often do, right? Like when we're in a fear mode or in a fear place, we tend to reject something about ourselves. We tend to abandon ourselves. We tend to neglect ourselves because the fear freezes us. The fear freezes us either in time, meaning there's something connecting to that fear that's connected to the past, Or it freezes us, because we're projecting something out into the future, and so it freezes us in the moment because we can't move from there. And so just ask yourself, what might be possible if I brought 5% more acceptance to those parts of myself that I have rejected because I feared disapproval? And could I let go of wanting to control another person's experience so I can feel better about myself? And this is something, we got to be very honest with ourselves here, because this is something we tend to do as human beings quite often. And we don't even notice it sometimes that we're doing it, that we want to control another person's experience. And very often it can be the people that we love the most. And the reason why we, of course, do that is because that's where it's the safest to do it. But look at your closest relationships, whether that's a spouse or a family member or, a child or somebody, a best friend, somebody that you're really, really close with. And just ask yourself, could I let go of wanting to control this person's experience just so I can feel better about myself? Because very often this controlling place comes from a place of fear. And when we're in fear, we want to do everything we can so we don't need to feel that fearful anymore. And so then we start to do things, we act on things that help us feel less fearful, right? And so one of the things can be controlling another person's experience. And then some other questions you can also ask yourself here is, what if fear was simply absent? What if there was no fear right now? Right? Like if we can check in with ourselves and we can determine, okay, I'm coming from a place of fear right now because there is a tension in my body. There is sort of like a holding in my body, which usually indicates that there's some level of fear. What if fear was simply absent? What if I could just allow myself to release that? And how would I proceed then? How would I proceed then? So really, what's important here, guys, is, trusting in the power of love and an open heart, or simply surrendering to something bigger and higher than myself. As we notice that there is fear in the space, right? As we're noticing that we're holding tight or we're trying to control, as we're noticing that something like that arises, if we just can trust the power of love and an open heart, right? If we just surrender and just allow it to be what it is, that might be most helpful. And just remember that fear is not truth. A lot of us think that when we're scared of something or that we're having fear be present in our lives, that that's something that is most likely going to take place, or that that's the truth of the matter. So fear is not truth. It is a feeling. Fear is always a feeling that is based on either memory or on worst case scenarios that we're imagining that might take place at some point, which are always speculation, right? When we're thinking about worst case scenarios in the future, that's always a speculation of a possible future. That is not the truth. It's not even 50% of the truth a lot of the time. I mean, even if your mind tries to convince you, oh, but this is something that could happen, and I need to be ready for it. I need to prepare for this possible, scenario to take place. We tend to convince ourselves that that means that this is definitely going to happen, or this is definitely something that we need to be ready for. But it just makes it worse, right? It creates more fear rather than less fear. And fear is really not the way to go. So we really want to be conscious of fear. We want to be conscious of how much we believe that our fear is actually true. And what we do with fear, right? How we act out or act on fear, right? Very important, because that is really what makes us either become people or humans who operate on a very low vibrational level and a very dense level, or it helps us to move beyond that and go into a much higher vibrational place with ourselves and life. So, as I mentioned earlier, Pluto is still stationing, so all of this, of course, has a lot of weight because of this Pluto station and because of this planet being really exalted. And so we have been more aware of this planet's impact on us, and it's been more in our face, and that causes a little bit of discomfort, right? When something's really in your face, it causes discomfort. And so we're being asked to hang out with that discomfort until the planet picks up speed again, which will be around October 22nd. So we still have a long way to go here, right? So as best as you can, take a closer look at whatever has been in your face for the past 2 weeks and what might no longer be in alignment with your deep, authentic emotional self, especially in connection to long-term goals or your standing in society. So take a look at some of these things. What is showing up? And rather than, whatever is showing up, going into fear mode, just go into, okay, life is trying to communicate with me right now. So just keep your heart open and just allow the communication to take place. So ask yourself, where am I holding on out of fear? What habits, behaviors, or fears are holding me back from feeling fully empowered from within? And then another thing to remember here also is that Pluto brings the temptation to obsess over long-term goals out of fear that there won't be enough recognition, or there won't be enough progress or results or achievement or the ability to provide in the world for ourselves, for others, etc. Right? So this could bring up sort of this obsession around that. So as best as you can, remember you're always accomplishing things and making progress, always, even if it's not visible yet. And so another thing that's really important to remember here with Pluto in Capricorn is self-care is a very important component in this. In fact, without self-care, we cannot accomplish anything. And we're always behind the 8 ball. So just remember, if you go into this obsessive place of like goals, long term, and career or whatever it might be that you're focused on, hyper focused on, just remember, without self-care, none of that is going to go anywhere. So ask yourself, what does self-care look like for me? What is that in my life? How do I do self-care? What nurtures me? What helps me bring my A game? And what role does rest and recreation play in my ability to achieve my highest potential and play a meaningful part in society at this time? Because I think a lot of us get so caught up in, running on that hamster wheel and trying to get somewhere with our accomplishments that we neglect ourselves. We don't rest enough. We don't give ourselves enough time to just come back with full strength and full force, when we're just taking some time out. So what role does rest and recreation play in my ability to achieve my highest potential and play a meaningful part in society at this time? And that is very much connected to that Pluto station. So feel free to ask any of these questions or just some of them. Not all questions are going to resonate the same for everybody. So feel free to just use whatever questions resonate the most. Now, again, for a more in-depth connection to our own birth chart, I recommend watching the Saturn and Pluto station webinar. So feel free to click on the link below this video to get more information about that. Now, Venus in Libra also quincunxes Neptune in Pisces. So we have 2 quincunxes in this new moon chart. And so again, it means, inner and outer adjustments, uncomfortable. It feels a little bit off. Something feels a bit off. And so we need to find creative ways to work with the energies at play. So we want to connect with others and also tune into our intuitive inner voice. We want to be with others, but also be alone. So as best as you can, allow your intuitive voice to come through and guide you, and let yourself also connect to other people at the same time. So ask yourself, could my inner equilibrium support me when connecting with others? And what do I hear when I get really quiet? And so, being really focused on the outside world sometimes prevents us from kind of practicing to be quiet within, to allow our mind to drop into our heart center, to allow ourselves to keep breathing quietly and regularly, and to just be with our breath, be with our body, rather than always be caught up in the mental, storm of conversations that go on in your head between your ears. Might resting, daydreaming, meditation, or time in nature help me feel more in tune with myself and others? So of course, Neptune in Pisces wants us to do all of that, right? Wants us to rest, daydream, meditate, time in nature. But of course, with all this energy in Libra, we may not always feel that we can take the time to do that. Or, we may feel that we need to do this, and then we may not always feel that we can connect with other people. So again, it's an adjustment, right? It's an inner adjustment. Now, Venus in Libra also sextiles Jupiter in Sagittarius. Now that's a little bit more of a helpful aspect that creates an opportunity for us to grow in our social and personal relationships with others. And with this aspect, you can ask yourself, what connections might expand my horizons at this time? And conversely, how might a wider view or perspective support my connections with others? And where could I collaborate with others to create expansion or goodwill in my life right now? All right, so that was the last aspect. And now let's sum it all up for this new moon. Life sometimes definitely forces us into dark and difficult experiences. And so whenever that happens, we need to keep in mind that when we experience that the gold in any such experience lies with how much we evolve as a result. Because difficult situations in life will always create character. They will create strength in us. They will create something in us, will evolve and grow and become more, right? More whole. So what you can ask yourself here is, where do I experience major tests around integrity or boundaries? Or where do I experience major tests around social propriety, which is, standards that are deemed socially acceptable or appropriate? Or where do I need to take more responsibility in my life? Or where do I need to draw the line and say, enough is enough? I can't do any more than that, or I don't want this anymore. So sometimes we have to just say, boundary. It's a boundary for us. So for the next 4 weeks, we are invited to engage in the development of our objective consciousness, deepening our ability to respect the needs, desires, and views of others as much as our own. And, here, just do your best to seek mutually beneficial relationships without compromising your own essential self, your own values, or your own goals. And just ask yourself, what does interconnectedness mean to me? And how is it different from codependency? And then here's another thought. What if the more we could approve of ourselves, the easier it would get to create relationships that honored both parties equally? And what might I do differently if that were true in terms of my relationship with myself, right? What would I do differently in terms of how I relate with myself if that would mean that I could create relationships that honored both parties equally? Now, if you do have an ascendant, a career point, or personal planets in 3 to 8 degrees of Libra, Aries, Capricorn, or Cancer, then you will definitely feel the impact of this new moon more strongly than other people. But even if you don't have planets or points in those degrees or signs, take a look in your birth chart. Where does 5.5 degrees of Libra land in your birth chart? And the house placement that falls into, that's the placement that indicates which area of your life is going to most impact it for the next 28 days. Now, if you don't know how to look that up, if you don't have a birth chart yet, then feel free to check out my 30-minute class on how to read a birth chart. You can get free access to that class via my homepage at astrologercoach.com. If you scroll down on my homepage and you get to a window that says free class, and you just click on that, and that will get you to that 30-minute class. And at the end of that class, I will talk to you also about how to get your own birth chart if you don't have one yet. All right, now let's talk about setting intentions for this new moon cycle. The best time to do so is always after the new moon becomes exact, so definitely not before. And we also want to avoid moon void of course phases. Now, if you don't know what they are, feel free to read my article on moon void of course phases on my website. It's in the astrology article section. I think there's a category called astrology articles. If you look for that, you'll find that article. And so this month, the best time to set intentions would be between 2:26 p.m. on September 28th and 10:06 p.m. on September 29th. And if that's not possible, there's another great time to set intentions between 5:42 a.m. and 2:26 p.m. on September 30th. And all of these times that I listed here are Eastern Daylight Savings Time in the New York City time zone, okay? So if you live in a time zone other than US East Coast time and converting time zones isn't your thing, then feel free to join me on my Facebook fan page or on my Twitter page. I will be posting reminders on September 28th in the afternoon and evening, on September 29th throughout the day, and September 30th in the morning, to let you know when is the best and most potent time to set your intentions. And when you see those posts pop up on my Facebook fan page and on Twitter, then just sit down right there and then and just write your intentions. Now, if you want more information about setting intentions, go to my website, also to the astrology article category on my blog page. Or you can also go to the tag New Moon Intentions, which is on the right-hand side of the blog page. If you're watching it from a computer, if you're on your phone, then you're going to have to scroll down all the way down on the blog page and look for categories and tags, and then go to astrology articles or New Moon Intentions. Okay, and then you can find more information about setting intentions, how to do that, what's the best way to get the most out of that practice. Now, to sign up for my free monthly newsletter, you can go to my homepage at astrologercoach.com, or you can email us at info@astrologercoach.com and just write newsletter in the subject line, and then my assistant will add you to that mailing list. We'll be sending out a newsletter usually once a month, sometimes twice a month, with special offers, the new moon videos, announcements about courses and retreats and anything to do with my business. So if that's of interest to you, feel free to sign up for that. And if you have any questions about the new moon in general or about astrology in general, always feel free to reach out to me at info@astrologercoach.com. General questions are always happy to answer those. If you have a personal question that includes something connection to your birth chart, and I would have to pull up your birth chart to answer your question, then feel free to book a reading with me at astrologercoach.com in the services section. Or if you have any questions about something that's coming up within the next 30 to 40 days in connection with your birth chart, join us for the next monthly forecasting forum on October 17th. We will focus on the third Mercury retrograde phase of the year in that forum, which will take place in Scorpio. We'll also talk about the shadow phases. So if there's anything around that you want answers to, in relationship to your own birth chart, feel free to join us. And my members will see me in 2 weeks from now, so we can take a look at how far we've come since setting our new moon intentions. And for everyone else, I'll be back in 4 weeks with the next new moon video. All right, have a good one. Remember, the new moon is an introverted time to go within and to just get in alignment with the energies so we can get ready for the new moon cycle. All right, have a good one. This is Astrologer Coach Sonja Francis.